Having fun doing this. We had another great podcast last week with Chrissy Poland. Make sure you go check that out. joegoretti.com/podcast. This is number 6 of the Drumming Career Podcast. I have another amazing guest I am super psyched to have and talk with today. He is a New York City legend. He's been around there for a long time, playing with a variety of people, including Hall Oates, Average White Band. He's the house drummer at Showtime at the Apollo, as well as live from Daryl's house. Here he is, folks. Brian Dunne. Brian.
Hey, man.
There he is. How's
What's
it going?
happening? Good.
Good to see
How
you.
are you, man?
I'm all right.
Same here.
Thanks for doing this. Psyched.
Nice.
So, where are you coming at us from today?
Ronkonkoma, Long Island.
Ronkonkoma, Long Island. Love it. Love it. Long Island. Very close. No, you're from Long Island originally, right?
I am.
Okay. That had to be cool, growing up close to the city, right?
Yeah, basically lived an hour from Manhattan my whole life.
Okay. So when did music come into your life?
Super early. I have two older brothers that played. When they were teenagers, one played guitar, one played drums. And so there was band rehearsals in the basement of my parents' house multiple times a week. Okay, so I was kind of just in it.
Absorbed it, sort of?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. And was drums the first thing that jumped out at you, or did you try something else?
Drums, the only thing I've ever
only
done.
Thing.
Yeah.
That's the answer, man. That's the answer. So about how old were you when you started playing drums?
I would say probably, wow. How old are you in 3rd grade?
About 7, 8, something.
Yeah, probably that. Probably around there.
Okay, cool. And you just picked them up and started playing, or did you start taking lessons at that time?
I started. I mean, there was always drums in the house, so I was just I would mess around with them. And my brother, at a very early age, he immediately jumped on me and started giving me lessons, teaching me how to read and the whole thing. Yeah.
So I was right off from 8, 9 years old. You were reading and learning from your brother. Cool.
Yeah.
Does your brother still play?
Both of them. The guitar player became a drummer. So they both play drums, but they both stopped. They stopped.
They stopped. They don't play at all anymore, not even for fun? Okay.
Not really.
Okay. So it runs in the family, clearly. The rhythm runs in the family. That's in your DNA. So you started doing it, and it stuck. So you kept on going, and did you do it like formal education, like high school or college?
Yeah, I basically when I was 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade, around that time, I took lessons with a guy named Al Miller, who out here on Long Island he was the guy. If you were serious about playing, he was definitely one of the guys you would go to. But I used to go take lessons with him every weekend, and there would be 2 drum sets set up, and he never let me touch the drums. It was just reading. It was reading, playing on the pad, getting technique together. And but I would go home, and then I would just play drums all week. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I mean, my reading ability by the time I was in 6th grade was what it was when I was in college. Like literally, it was the same repertoire I was doing, because anything my brother did, I was just doing by default. Mm-hmm. So my brother's 7 years older than me. So, when I was in 6th grade, 7th grade, I was reading out of the Albright book and the Podemsky book, and all the stuff that you see when you're in school after high school. But I mean, I definitely wasn't reading charts or anything. It was just snare drum repertoire.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it was definitely. I feel like I had a good mix. I had a teacher in those years, and Al Miller, that was serious about the reading thing. But then I had my brother who was always a reader as well. But his thing was, let's just drop that needle on the record and use your ears.
Yeah,
that's it. So that's all I did. And he would also, both my brothers were so into music that anything that they got into, they got deep into it. So when they would go through their phases of music, It would be, you know, when they discovered who Shaka Khan was, it was like, wow. And then they went out and got live at the Savoy, Rufus and Shaka Khan, you know, and, you know, or when my brothers got into Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind and Fire, it was like, they'd really get in there deep. So I was the recipient of these guys bringing home records,
Right.
and just being like, that's what you do. So
Okay. Yeah.
I was
And
lucky.
yeah, it sounds like a lot of R&B, a lot of funk, soul music was happening in there.
Yeah. You know, to be honest with you, it started with my earliest recollection of playing and hearing my brothers. They were Bad Company guys. Bad
Okay.
Company, you know, Bad Company, Zeppelin, Ronnie Montrose.
Mhm.
That was the thing for them. But yeah, it very quickly the R&B thing came, and then of course my brother Kevin, who continued playing drums into college, he went through a huge Max Roach, you know, a time where he was coming home with the Max Roach and Clifford Brown records. So and the way he followed it was, you probably did the same thing, and a lot of drummers I know have. I was discovering the straight ahead thing in a kind of backward, weird kind of way. So I was listening to Max. I was listening to Tony. Like my brother discovered Tony before he discovered Max, which is like kind of backwards, you know.
Yeah.
But we all, you know, you work your way through it, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So what was that like for you when you first were exposed to that kind of drumming after like hearing all the pocket stuff? Did you take to it right away, or were you kind of like,
I didn't, man, to be perfectly honest, man.
same here?
The first time I heard it, I liked it, but when I would hear the like I was listening to Chick Corea Electric Band before I was listening to like real straight
Same.
ahead, right? Right.
Same.
So the problem was, I'd put on a bebop record, and the time wasn't absolutely tight, and it I was bewildered by that, and I wasn't grown and I wasn't mature enough to realize that it's a different feel, and those guys are feeling things in big and phrases, and it's not this, you know.
Right. Right.
So I had to just grow up and wrap my head around it.
Yeah, same here. I feel the exact same way, and it's the same record. It was Chick Corea Electric Band, and Weckl, you know, is doing all the stuff, and of course, I mean, it's stupendous. He's killing, absolutely
Amazing.
killing. But when you talk to the old school jazz guys, and they're like, those fusion guys, you know, they're playing that stuff, and that
Yeah.
was the first thing that I heard, and I remember hearing Elvin Jones for the first time and being like, oh, this is awful. This guy's all sloppy. His time's all over the road. And now I'm like, oh, I just couldn't fathom what was happening at the time, you
Yeah.
know, but it's
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
to talk to drummers that came up the pocket way and then heard that. And what was the first thing you felt when you heard bebop for the first time? And it's really,
Yeah.
it tends to be a similar story. That's a trip. Okay. So now you're plugging along, you're studying with Al Miller, you said was his name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In Long
Yep.
Island. And you're got your brothers. When did you start playing with other cats?
I was never playing with. I had no one to play with, like in high school. There was no one. There was no one was making bands at that point. Like my brother's generation, I think, was sort of the last generation where that was happening a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And at least where I went to school, there wasn't a lot of guys playing, like running home from school to jam. Like I wasn't part. And if that was happening, I wasn't part of it. But by the time I was 14, maybe, yeah, 14, I was in a wedding band. My father used to drive me on weekends
No
to do
kidding.
weddings. Yeah. So I was in 10th grade doing it, playing weddings on the weekends.
Wow.
So yeah. So luckily again, my brother Kevin was doing club dates right out of high school. So as soon as he realized, like, oh, he can play, you need to start playing with people, and so he got me an audition with a wedding band, and I was like this little kid playing in a wedding band, but the money was amazing.
Yeah, I know it. And for that age, you must have. I remember getting, like 14. I just wanted to get a paper route to make $75, but you're making
Yeah,
like decent
yeah,
bread. Wedding gig. That's a trip. So you obviously stuck in wedding bands for quite a while, because that's kind of where our paths crossed years
yep,
later. So
yep.
And again, I always say this is like the dirty little secret of the music, the working musician's life, you know, weddings. You know, at least when I was a kid, I never dreamed of playing weddings. And then when I got old
Right.
enough, I'm like, okay, well, if I want to pay my rent in New York City of it, you know, it was like, play some weddings.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool. So, all right. So now you're playing around town, and were you in like a steady wedding band, or were you doing the usual and jumping to different ones?
You know, every band I've been in for a good amount of time. So that first band I was in, I was there for a couple of years, and I'm trying to think. Wow, I'm trying to think what band I was in. I mean, I was sort of in a steady band when I finally met somebody who kind of broke me out of just being in those circles, and that was a sax player named Dave Mann.
Okay.
And he wound up I maybe he was subbing or something, and he dug what he heard, and the next thing I knew, I was playing with him and his brother Ned. Ned was a great bass player that used to play with Mike Stern and Michelle Camillo for years, um, and uh, and Dave, and you know, I was hanging with those guys and playing with them, and then they that's how the word started to spread. Like Dave found out that Nelson Rangel, the saxophone player he knew from when they were younger, was looking for a drummer. And like next thing I know, Nelson calls me, and never met him, never heard me, no audition, just said, "Oh, Dave Mann says that I should use you. So you want to be in my band?" Done. Like I was flying to Denver to do a gig with Nelson. You know what I mean? So having the right person give give a recommendation is the deal, as you know. And
Yeah,
that's kind of how it started.
and it came from a wedding band, right? He was subbing on
Yep.
a wedding gig. It's a
Yep.
trip. I've known a lot of people that have. Again, I think there's a mindset, and I keep driving this home because I didn't know it when I was coming up as a drummer. You know, like about what it really means to play those kinds of gigs and to be a full time musician and stuff. And
Yeah.
you know, I remember guys at Berkeley that would never lower themselves to play at wedding, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's like, and they're playing $50 jazz gigs in a basement in Manhattan somewhere, some of them, you know. But at the same time, you see that like with the wedding thing, that led to this incredible gig that led, and it was a similar thing with me. You know, you meet these people on the gigs, and then that leads to the next thing and opens up a whole other door for you.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
were you touring with Nelson?
Yeah. It was kind of, it wasn't touring like old school touring, but it was, you know, you go out for a weekend or you do a couple of gigs in a row. And right around that time too, I was like, it's when I moved to Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn for about 12 years. And when I moved to Brooklyn, I met, you know, right at that time, I was playing with Mike Pope, the bass player Mike Pope,
Mhm.
and Tom Guarna and Mike Raschuti and Tim Lefevre.
Mhm.
And it was like a whole group, a whole bunch of people that lived in Brooklyn at that point. And I had a lot of band rehearsals at my house. Now I moved into the apartment that Sal Ramundi moved out of. And that
Okay.
was where I lived for 12 years. And in that place, I could have band rehearsals. So I had guys coming over my house literally 4 or 5 times a week. If it was just to play through somebody's original tunes, just whatever. And all that was happening at the same time. And so the same thing happened with Chuck Loeb. Like Tim Lefevre was playing with Chuck Loeb, and Zach Danziger was the drummer.
Mhm.
And at that time, and I still am, a ridiculous fan of his.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I don't want to say he's underrated because he's not. I mean, I don't even know what to say. He's just super bad. Not enough people realize that. So
Right.
anyway, props to him.
Yeah, and a
Um,
cutting
so
edge guy, a cutting
yeah,
edge cat. He's
and
always pushing.
always has been,
Yeah.
always has been. You know, I saw him play. I've told this story a billion times, but it means something to me. I saw Michelle Camillo play at McKell's when I was 16 years old, and I was a senior in high school. And I'm pretty certain that we're the same age, Zach and I. And I thought I was going to see Dave, you know, and I walk in that little club, and there's this kid like that, you know, that's a kid, man.
Yeah.
And that was mind blowing.
Right.
Because it wasn't like someone playing great for 16. It was like, you're kidding me, right? Like it was, and for me, it was a great thing to see because I was like, whoa, like when you come when you grow up in North Babylon, Long Island, and you're pretty good at the drums,
Right.
it's super eye-opening when you go into Manhattan and you see someone who looks like you and is playing like
Right.
like Dave or something, or like it was a cool thing to see, and it was a real lesson learned. Not that I ever thought that, like, oh yeah, I'm good enough. Like, that's still not the case, but it was a excellent kick in the rear end
Mm-hmm.
to make me be like, whoa, I have like a lot of work to do, So yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to replace him. Perfect. With Chuck Loeb. But that again, like all gigs, the gig you're on usually I don't know, begets the next gig, and it's a lot of times it's a lot of similar gigs. So
Right.
that was a lot of, since Chuck was regarded as more of a smooth jazz guy, which, as you know, we all know, those are like R&B gigs. They're not really jazz gigs. But of all those gigs, Chuck's is one of the rare ones where there is jazz going on there, in terms of, he's a real improviser. His music wasn't just two chord jams.
Yeah.
His stuff was pretty sophisticated harmonically, and he's a bebop guitar player at heart. You know what I mean? So yeah, so he was an amazing guy to be around, and that dude for me made probably the biggest difference, because almost anything that I've done, I think, can be tied to him somehow, because of he carried serious weight.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. You say Josh Dion. Do you know Josh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Josh.
And I
Yeah.
watched the show. It was great.
Oh, great. Great. Thanks for watching it. Yeah, that we talked about Chuck with
Uh-huh.
Josh, and the whole scene, like you're talking about, with getting into that scene, and how you said sometimes one gig begets other gigs of that same. So you almost get like typecast in the smooth
Yeah,
jazz world, right? And
yeah.
so, all right. So you're playing around a lot of the smooth jazz guys, and were you doing a lot of like fusion stuff as well?
Yeah, I mean, I was playing with Timmy a good amount, and I was playing with Pope a good amount,
Yeah.
and I was playing at the 55 bar.
Right.
I was subbing. I was playing like Sundays with Laney Stern and Timmy. I used to
Hmm.
sub for Lionel Cordew.
Okay.
Um, and a few times Wayne came and played with us, and playing with, sometimes Lincoln would play bass.
Right.
So it was like a nice mix. And then right around that time, um, we played the Blue Note with Chuck for a week, and we had Michael Brecker as a guest soloist. And
Wow.
for me, that's the end. Like,
Yeah.
I'm as much a Brecker fan than any drummer.
Yeah.
Like, not like I enjoy, I'm a fan of his saxophone playing as much as I am of any drummer's drumming, right?
Right. Right.
And so for me, it was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. And so while we were playing there, around that time, ever hear of the band the Funk Philharmonic?
Yes.
So the Funk Philharmonic was playing at La Barbat. I don't know if you
Mhm.
remember that club.
I do. Yep.
And yeah, so I used to sub for the drummer, Lee Finkelstein.
Hmm.
But I used to sub like twice a year. So every time you do the gig, it's like the first time you're doing it.
Right.
And um, Brent Carter was the lead singer at that point, who was also had been singing with Tower of Power, right?
Yep.
And he knew that the Average White Band was in town, and they were going to be doing auditions, which I was not called for to audition,
Okay.
right? But Brent told those guys to come to the club to hang out. And
Okay.
I happened to be subbing that night and didn't know that they were there.
Wow.
All the stereotypes of, you never know who's watching,
Right.
right? So
Totally.
I'm doing this gig. I did my homework. I mean, it's a great band. So, I mean, how could
Yeah.
you not do your homework, right? So I did the gig, and then those guys were there. The Average White Band was there. And then the next day I got a call, and the sax player was like, "Hey man, Alan dug what he saw last night. We're holding auditions." So he's like, "I think I think you kind of already got the gig if you want it, but he wants to play with you. He wants to see what it feels like, you know? So I was like, all right, great. Like it was awesome. And I went to audition for those guys, but I went down there knowing that later that week I was playing at the Blue Note with Brecker. So it was so, not that I didn't care, because I really did, but it, it was mind blowing that I was going to get a chance to play with Brecker, right? So I went in there so relaxed. Plus, again, they already saw me play without having the pressure, you know? So I went in and auditioned and I got the gig. So that, you know, everything, all the stars aligned, and like in a lot of ways, I was helped out by those the scenarios, you know?
Yeah,
So
totally. I mean, the just the fact that you were subbing it. Boy, I bet you Lee kicks himself for missing that. I got to get Lee on the show. Um, yeah, but you're right, and what you said also, you did your homework, you showed up, and you were ready, so that when those people were in the audience, they saw a polished guy that knew what was happening, and somebody that they
yeah,
wanted to work with. And also, like you were saying, those are good problems to have, where you have to, you're on your way to an average white band uh, audition, but you're playing with Michael Brecker later that week, so if you don't get it,
yeah,
that's
it's
okay.
crazy.
You're doing great stuff. Cool. So things started to take off. So now you got the gig with Average White Band. Now, did you guys start touring, or what happened with that?
Um, yeah, I mean, as soon as I joined the band, that was like 2000. I'm sorry, I really left out something that's really important, and it's really the first real national artist tour I ever did, which was was before that, was with a girl named Alana Davis.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I hate that I forgot that. I mean, crazy. I was messing up my order. Alana's thing came when I was playing with Chuck. I was playing a lot with Chuck, and then I got an opportunity to audition for Alana.
Okay.
And do you remember a bass player named Kevin Jenkins?
No, I don't.
Kevin was playing. Kevin at the time, he had done like the Maxwell gig, and he was playing with Enrique Iglesias.
Okay.
He was the bass player for Cyndi Lauper, like during the '80s, during her heyday, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Kevin's a great player, beautiful cat, and I was playing every Monday night at Terra Blues. It was a jam night, Monday night, and I was the house drummer there with Bobby Bell, and um, Kevin was playing with Alana Davis. So he got me he threw my name in the hat to audition. And the band was Kevin Jenkins, myself, and Drew Zing on guitar.
Okay.
Who was a bad dude. And of course Alana. And that turned into like 2 years of heavy touring. Because
Yeah.
she went from like 0 to 100 because she just had a hit. She did a cover of an Ani DeFranco tune, 32 Flavors, and it was a hit. And she was immediately doing all these television shows. And Gene Lake was the drummer in her band at the
Oh yeah, I
time.
love Gene.
Yep. So I came in after Gene. Federico Pena was the keyboard player. And so those guys left, and then it was me and Drew. And I bring it up too. I miss her, and that was an awesome experience for me. And it was a real pop gig. It wasn't a smooth jazz gig. It wasn't a blues gig or a jazz gig. It was a pop gig, but like she was sophisticated and she was funky.
Mm-hmm.
And but I bring it up because I was doing weddings, but I was in the smooth jazz world. But I was playing at Terra Blues on Monday night and having those late nights and playing, and just playing some funk and rock and roll. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can't get your hands on all these gigs. They're elusive if you're not out there doing it and doing one thing. It can happen, but it's going to be much harder.
Yeah.
So
Agreed. Totally agreed. Yeah, and that's people forget your name quick if you go out on tour or something like that. If you're not in town, there's
Yep.
so many people in New York. There's so many great players, that if you're not in the rotation, then you don't get calls anymore when you're off the road. So yeah, when you got to keep plugging out and being out there. So Alana, now you're touring, like world touring or mostly US?
It was US. It was
US
US.
tours? Okay. And
Yeah.
TV dates and stuff. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. So that was sort of like setting you up for the future, because you've worked into some pretty awesome TV gigs.
Yeah, man.
We'll get there. We'll get there. But I just want to, point out the foreshadowing there. So you're doing the Alana gig, and you're playing, got the Average White Band gig, and now you're touring with them. And so how does that play out?
Basically, about 5 years in, I started playing with Patti Austin, and so I was playing both with Patti and with AWB. And right around the time I started playing with Patti and Patti's band, it was a trio. It was Patti, me, Tim Lefevre on bass, acoustic bass, and Mike Raschuti, and it was straight ahead. It was like playing like real trio stuff, and when they would plop us in the middle of orchestras. So we were touring around and playing with like major orchestras, and she was ridiculous, man. And around that time, I started working more with this musical director named Ray Chu, and so I knew 5 years had already gone by with AWB, and as much as I love the music and I love that they treat people, no one does it better.
Yeah.
So it was really, really like unbelievably hard to stop doing that gig. But I kind of made a decision that I was gonna be around town a little more, between Ray, between Patti. I got a couple of opportunities for some soundtracks, like movie soundtracks.
Wow.
That Chuck Loeb was tied into. So all that stuff started happening, and I was like, I took a leap of faith. I had a great, amazing, steady gig playing great music. Like everything about it was perfect. And I took off. But it turned out to be a good thing, because I was able to leave them gracefully. And I started working with Patti, became like the main thing for me at that point. And I started getting more work with Ray. And eventually,
now, Ray, I just want to, because we're throwing a lot of names that we know in the New York scene. So Ray Chu, he's the musical director at Showtime at the Apollo, right?
Showtime at the Apollo, which actually is not happening right now, the television show. But for years it was played, and he was the MD. I mean, anything having to do with the Apollo, he was essentially the man. And then he went on to be the MD for American Idol, and then after that, excuse my ignorance here, Dancing with the Stars.
Okay.
And he's still there. He's still doing Dancing with the Stars. And then Showtime at the Apollo came back for a season. Okay. And when they came back, he was the MD, and I wound up doing like 13 episodes of that.
Okay.
Which was a trip, man.
That's what I was going to ask you about. So, all right. So you're out with Patti for a while. You just left Average White Band. You're out with Patti, and you're having a blast doing this new thing with the trio and all that. And so was that the next thing that you wound up doing with Showtime? Or what's in between?
No. Then after being with Patti for a while and in and out doing Ray things here and there, I got the opportunity to sub for Sean Pelton on the Daryl Hall's television show, Live from Daryl's House. Cool. And at that point, and still to this day, the band was made up of, it was basically the Hall Oates band minus the drummer. Everybody lived close except for the drummer, Mike Braun, great drummer, who was living in Portland, I think. So rather than, I think the deal was they'd have to fly him in every time he was going to do one of these things. And this television show, it wasn't like a Hall & Oates thing. It was just Daryl, and it wasn't like people were paying for this. I think he was probably footing the bill himself. So, and it wasn't a big production at this point. It was pretty scaled down, and it was just on the internet. So anyway, Sean was the drummer of that gig. And I remember T-Bone I remember being out with Average White Band. Again, you don't know who's watching you. Opening up for Hall Oates, like years ago, right? And T-Bone Walk, the bass player, he dug me. He dug what he saw, and he remembered me. And years went by, many years went by, and I get a call from T-Bone, and he's like, "Hey, man, we do this internet show with Daryl, and Sean can't make a gig. You want to come and do a gig?" And I was like, "Yes," you know. And I kind of came in, I subbed, and it went well, and Daryl dug it. And so from that point on, if Sean wasn't going to make a thing, that I was the sub, right? And then shortly after that, the drummer for Hall Oates had to sub out. And when he went, and the thing is, he came to me first and said, "Hey, I might be missing some gigs. If I do, can you do it?" And he's like, "I'm just trying to cover my bases." He was trying to do the right thing for the band. And I was like, "Yeah, I could do it." And when he went finally to tell them, before he told them that he called me, Daryl said, "Yeah, call that guy. What's his name?" But like, I don't even think he knew who I was. I mean, I think he was like, "Call that guy Brian." Is that his name? So and he's like, "Oh, it turns out he's available." So it felt if I was an artist, I'd be the same way. You like to see someone familiar, and it's not like the unknown, right? So he heard we played together.
Yeah, you already know it works.
Yeah. So I wound up becoming the sub on that gig, kind of at that point too. And then over time, I wound up just getting both gigs. I just,
awesome.
I lived, I like, at that point, it's, where I lived probably helped. And,
where do they shoot where's his house? Where do they shoot?
Well, the first 7 years of it was literally at his house, and it's up in not Pauling, like Amenia, like about 15 minutes north of Pauling, New York.
Okay.
Right. And then they bought a club. They bought what used to be the Old Town Crier, and then they turned it into a club called Live from Daryl's House. Okay. And that's where we shot. Then they made the inside look like his house. And then we've been shooting the television show there ever since.
Okay, great. So I'm going to go back a little bit because I do want to talk about Showtime at the Apollo, because like you just said, it's crazy. I mean, if anybody hasn't seen the show, I mean, the show itself is, I mean, first of all, it's steeped in tradition, the Apollo and everything like that, the hallowed halls, but just the show itself, in Showtime particularly, where the crowd can boo.
Oh yeah.
Right at the end. That's got to be something, man. So what was it like to play take me to the very first time you had to play that gig?
Yeah, we basically we had like 2 days to rehearse all the songs that all the contestants were going to do, right? And Ray Chu is a ridiculous taskmaster. It's crazy because like you don't until you see what, like, we all see what MDs go through, but it's a whole nother layer when you're dealing with musicians, but then you're dealing with amateurs, and you're dealing with producers constantly, like in his ear, like while we're playing. There's always someone talking to him and giving and telling him things, and he's just dealing with it all. I couldn't imagine doing something like that. Yeah. So kudos to him. So basically, we would rehearse very quickly. It was like very short increments of time to play a tune, and then Ray would basically have to tell the contestant, like, "Okay, you got to pick a tempo. Let's pick a tempo. Let's find it, because that's what it's going to be. It's not going to be close to that tempo. It's going to be exactly this tempo. So once we do it, we're going to mark it down, and that's where it's going to be." And so he knew what to say, how to say it, to get things done fast, So we would learn all the stuff, and then when it came time to do the show, it's like it's live TV. So if the contestant messes up, too bad. Right. If we mess up, too bad.
Right.
And if we mess up and a contestant thinks they could have done better and it was our fault in the days of social media, yeah,
Oh
that's not
yeah.
good.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
there's like, it's like, whoa, it's like serious pressure, you know? So yeah, man. And it everything just seemed to happen really, really fast. You know, like I remember being on stage and like Ray came up with what we were gonna play for like the commercial breaks, like right there on stage, like minutes before.
Awesome.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah,
So he's
so
just like
it was a
calling off, like he's doing the commercial bumps and he's calling them off like he's at an open jam, kind of like.
it's yeah, man, just like just banging stuff out really fast. And to the band's credit, like, and to his credit, because he had the guts and the wherewithal to know that he can trust us. So it showed all of us that how much confidence in us he has, you know, because that's his butt on the line
Yeah,
when we blow it.
right.
You know,
You're his soldiers, his
so
troopers, man.
yeah, so he's yeah, so it was very fast paced. And the other thing is, like, with the booing with the audience, we had music for that, so we have to prepare. There was a guy on the side of the stage that was controlling Pro Tools, right? So
Okay.
he would hit all the count offs for all the tunes. And Ray's like, if the once the horn goes off, if the people boo loud enough, you hear a siren. Once the siren goes off, we have to be ready to play. You know, we had two different playoff things for when someone's getting thrown off the stage, when the Sandman comes off and sweeps them off.
Right.
And sometimes, like, we wouldn't know which one we were going to play, A or B, like the slow one or the fast one, because he didn't want to play the same one every time, right? So I'd be sitting there watching from backstage, behind my kit in the dark, and now the crowd starts booing, and now I'm like, which one is it? Are we doing, are we doing A or are we doing B? Like, I don't know which one we're gonna do. And then all of a sudden I hear, like, we're gonna do B. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, you're in. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? And it's, again, it's not that big a deal, but it is live TV, right?
Yeah.
So I want to just say one thing that happened. We were actually sitting there, and not all the guests played music. Some of them jumped rope or whatever. There was all different kinds of things, magicians. But we would do like 9 shows in 2 days. So we would do like 9 full episodes. So it would be 1 o'clock in the morning, and we would be finishing up an episode, and it would be like, okay, bring the new crowd in. There'd be people lined down the street in Harlem at 1:30 in the morning, and they bring a whole new house in, and they'd empty that out for every show. And we'd be playing at 2:30 in the morning. We'd be shooting a show after being there for 15 hours. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I remember it was probably like 2:30 in the morning. I had been there since like 6 o'clock the last morning. I was almost unconscious, and I'm sitting behind my kit, and this people are performing in front of me. And the next thing I know, the audience is booing, but I'm zoned out and I'm not paying attention. And I'm literally almost asleep. And I remember just like, I had my head down and I picked my head up and I was like, and I don't know why, I just picked up my sticks. I just went to grab my sticks. And as I grabbed my sticks, all of a sudden I hear 1, 2, 3, 4. And I just started, you just gotta start playing, right? It was the count-in, because the people were getting booed so loud, we had to play them off. And thank God for that count off. Saved my life. Saved my life. Because I was zoning out. Oh my God.
I can't believe you guys have to shoot it like that. That sounds brutal.
Oh yeah, man. We were there all day and night.
What'd you say? 9 shows in 2 days?
I think we did 9. Yeah, it was 13 total. No, 7 shows. 7 shows in 2 days.
Still,
and then
that's intense, man.
Yeah.
Wow. And you're not on stage, right? You said you're set as the band, like backstage, or are you in a pit or what?
We're on stage, but in the back.
Okay.
And we're spread out along the wall, so there's no depth. Everybody's next to each other.
I don't think the audience can see you, right?
No, they could. And when the cameras are on, like I actually got some great camera time on that show. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't like we were never front and center though.
Okay.
We were always in the back.
I went one time actually to the Showtime at the Apollo. I was there. I was way up in the nosebleeds, and I couldn't remember it. But man, that's intense. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I've done some TV stuff. I did Saturday Night Live, which is cool, but that's 2 songs. You know what I mean? And it's easy, and they're like far apart, and you're hanging out in the green room and drinking beer and whatever. So that's pretty.
Yeah.
You guys are working, man. Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so was that your first sort of TV like house band type gig where you were
Yeah.
in the house band?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, and then so now what's Daryl's house like? What's shooting there?
It's really great.
It looks,
but it's also
chill.
it's
It looks
horrifying. It's horrifying at the same time. Basically, there's no rehearsals for that.
Okay.
And we find out what we're going to play about a week before, and we come in. We usually meet the artist, whoever the guest artist is, at around like noon, and by 1 o'clock we start. And as soon as we start, we basically, the MD just says, okay, we're going to do this tune. Okay, how do you do it live? Is it, because usually we get record versions of stuff, so we know the form's going to be a little different. And Daryl doesn't want us to play it like exactly like the record ever. He's like, do your homework, but don't do too much, because he wants it to be our version. Okay. That day, right? So he wants us to honor the what the artist has done, but not to the point like where you and I are used to. I'm used to, like, if I have something to learn, I'm going to learn that, and I'm going to play it just the way they want, and I'm going to assume they want the record until they tell me they want something else. Or if I'm given a live tape, I'm going to play it like the last guy who did it, because that's currently what the artist is used to. And then if I have the artist turn around and say, okay, you're doing what the last guy did, I need you, and then great, that's what I'll do. But I want to honor that, right? So like you, I come from a sideman mentality, and with this, it's like Daryl doesn't want that as necessarily. He wants, like, learn it, but we want to do our thing with it, right? And then the other layer here is he never wants to play it more than twice. So, like, he wants to talk about what we're going to do and then play. And unless there's a train wreck, don't stop. And when we get to the end, talk about whatever you want to change about what we just did. And that's it. Play it one more time. And then live with it. And then also don't listen back. There's no listening back. So what you're ever 100%. We've never played a note in that place and then listened back to it. Not once. He just, when we get to the end of the tune, Daryl will go, hey, Pete, how's that? Or Pete, the engineer in the background, will go, that sounded good to me. And Daryl will be like, yeah, it felt good. Next. And usually the guest artist is like, come on, are you guys serious?
That's hilarious. It's the same way. So, Moby's the same exact way. And we would be in the studio, and he wouldn't want to hear the playback at all. I cut a whole record with him. He didn't listen to it once. And the engineer's like begging him, please come and listen, to see if you want to take and all that. And any other singer, because we usually want to hear the stuff back. We would have singers, and they'd be like, can I hear that back? And he'd be like, no, you give these people an inch, they take a mile. It was not only good, it was good enough, And
wow.
So that's funny that those cats work that way. So, but what's Daryl like? I mean, just to work with, he seems like a chill guy.
He's great, man. He's great. He's a real, him and John too, same thing. They're lovers of music, and they're old school, man. They're real as real can be, they're not telling any of us, like, there's no direction. It's like, you guys, we hired you. You guys are pros, man. Do your thing. I mean, they just assume that we're going to bring the right stuff,
No kidding.
They know that's the song rules in their world. The song rules. Okay. And as long as you as long as they recognize that you have that in you, any individual flavor you want to bring, that's fine. That's on you.
That's awesome. So as far as like the nuts and bolts of the gig, are you when you're on stage with them, are you on a click? Or are you doing any with the it's really, you're playing old school, counting them off and playing
Zeros, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
and no rehearsals in that band either. Like, not Daryl doesn't even come to sound check.
I was just going to ask you about sound check. You don't even get the like obligatory. Wow.
No, we sound check. We sound check, and John comes to sound checks, but Daryl doesn't come to sound checks. So yeah, man. And like Daryl's like not a rehearsal guy, you know, like he's I remember we played the grand finale of The Voice. No, the grand finale of The Voice, yeah, of The Voice. And we hadn't seen each other like, I think in, I don't know, 3 or 4 months we hadn't played. And next thing, you know, we're like flying to California. We never got together. We never got together once. We didn't rehearse. Nothing. Like
Okay.
zero. Like we didn't even, it's not even like, let's figure out how we're going to play exactly 3 minutes and 14 seconds. What do we have to do? Like nothing. We just showed up and like, we're finding out what tune we're going to play when we're there.
Wow.
And
See,
like,
I would be,
you know,
I would be like a wreck, man. You know, like, especially with those kind of things, one of the things that calms my nerves is preparation, knowing that I can prepare and, it's like, get it together. But wow, man, you're like,
yep.
you can't even rely on the click in your ear to keep you, and you're just winging it. That's,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it's also got to be pretty cool though, from a guy that's coming from your background and playing as long as you have. That's got to be good to play like that, right? Free.
It is. It is. I like it because there's less. I mean, you know, it can add production wise, it can be great and it can sound better when you have that stuff. But when you don't, there's also there's less stress actually in many ways because there's less things that are going to go wrong.
Yeah.
It's just like if a microphone doesn't work, it doesn't work. You have another one, but dealing with background tracks they don't mess with any of that stuff, man. It's super old school.
That's
super
amazing.
old school.
And you guys are. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go.
I was just gonna say, and you're playing like Madison Square Garden with these.
Yeah. Yeah, it's insane. It's insane after all these years. As a matter of fact, the last gig I played was February 28th, almost exactly a year ago. The last time I played the drums outside of my house and made money, it was at Madison Square Garden with those guys.
Wow.
Yep.
My last gig was at a fish place. Fish restaurant.
Yo, I wanted to tell you something about the click thing, where the stuff can go wrong. About around the time that I was leaving the AWB, mm-hmm. I auditioned for a Broadway show for a show called Hot Feet, and it was music of Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I was like, never in a million years did I think I was ever going to get it, but I knew that Maurice White was coming to New York to audition people. So I auditioned, and I auditioned with Artie Reynolds was the bass player, and Keith Robinson played guitar in the band that I auditioned with. And it was like a killer band. And we played, just to be in the room with Maurice was unbelievable to me, right? And he chose us. He chose the 3 of us. We were the rhythm section that got chosen for this thing, which was kind of odd in the Broadway world too, because contractors usually have their guys they call. And so we were very lucky and very fortunate. But again, being the drummer playing Earth, Wind, and Fire stuff with Artie Reynolds and Keith Robinson, you have to be like pretty bad to not sound good with these guys, right? So luck, again, luck for me. And I remember we had done a bunch of rehearsals. I was around Maurice every day, hours a day, and playing that stuff in front of the guy who did it was nerve-wracking but awesome. And the first time we played it in public, we were in a theater in DC, the National Theater. There was like filled with celebrities, and the pit in that theater wasn't big enough to accommodate us. So we were in a 5 stories up on a different floor, right? And they had the stuff snaked in, and we had TV monitors. And I remember playing, and we get to the last song of the first half. And on this stuff there was clicks, there was pre-recorded background vocals, there was all kinds of stuff going on, plus a 14-piece band, 15-piece band, right? So, but this stuff sounded ridiculous, right? And we're playing the last tune of the first half. Vivian Nixon is like the star dancer. It's like a big moment of the show, and it's a house groove. And I'm playing, and all of a sudden I hear whoosh, silence. And now I'm like, so I'm almost immediately I'm falling off the click, and I'm staring at the MDs in front of me playing keys, and I see him go like this. He looks up like, oh my God, what's going on? And I'm going, kill the machine, because he had a big red button that he could turn off all the backing stuff, right? So he hits it, he turns it off, and now we're playing still. Now, I still don't hear anything. It's a silent room. There's no amplifiers. I'm encaged in glass, right? So I look down on the floor and I see that my pack fell off. So now I'm playing the bass drum and I lean over, I pick it up, I plug back in. I'm still not out of trouble because now I don't even know where I am in the song.
Right.
Because this charts, it was a friggin' nightmare. So when we get to the end of the tune, there's an intermission. So I walk out, I'm like, I gotta give some air. I was freaking out because nothing like this had ever happened. It was smooth sailing for weeks, right? So I get in the elevator. As soon as the elevator door opens up, Maurice White is standing face to face with me.
Of course.
And he leans over to me and he goes, you lost the click. And I said, yep. And he goes, why? And I go, because now that I'm real thinking about it, it's because he knew I wouldn't just lose the click. He figured there was a reason, And I said, my in-ears pack fell off my belt. And he looked at me and he went, and he gave me a big smile and he tapped me on the shoulder. He went, this is what happens when we use all this stuff, He goes, this happens sometimes. He's like, but don't worry about it, man. Great job. And then he goes, I want to go and say hello to everybody. And he went up and I was like, I was palpitating.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah.
I could imagine.
Yeah.
You must have felt. I mean, I know how you felt. Yeah, and it's a drag when things like that happen, and it's no fault of your own. I had a similar situation playing at a festival in New Zealand, and it was like the festival crowd thing where they're like, you play your set, and then they have the next band, and it's just absolute mayhem. And I had my own mixer with the click and tracks and all this other stuff under normal circumstances. And this time, all I had was a click and Moby's guitar. And that's all I could hear, and I had to play a whole festival. And Moby's guitar playing isn't always that. It's not like he's always playing the part. He kind of drops in and out, you know what I mean? And so I had to figure that one out, man. But there you go. You're in front of all these crazy people, but like you said, that when the technology cuts out, if it's just you playing, right, you'll be fine. But when all these other things, it adds this whole other element of crap. Wow, yeah, that's a trip, man. That's a great story. Thanks for sharing that. So what? Okay, so now we're up to what you were doing before the pandemic hit, which was playing at Madison Square Garden with Hall Oates. So what have you been doing since everything went away?
I've been recording in the house. I started doing
company, right? It's
Back of the Bus Productions.
Back of the
drum
bus,
tracks, baby. Remote drum tracks.
Very cool.
The truth is I've been doing the remote drum thing for 17 years. I started doing it really early in the game, I think. Again, because of Chuck Loeb. I remember doing a session when Avid came out with, at the time, I think they were just called Digidesign. They came out with the ability to record at 192. Right now, this is a long time ago. They hired Chuck to record music. We did it up at Bear Tracks to record music at 44, at 96, at 192, and a 2-inch tape machine. So they could really A/B, and we had the same guys on the same gear, the same day, and we just kept playing over and over again, right? Wow. And the payment involved with that was gear. Digidesign gave us a piece of gear, and that's what got me in. I had no money, but I got an M box out of it. Right.
Yeah, the
So
M
when I
box.
got the M box, I mean, and they used the recording we did at like an AES show or something, and it was cool. It was Chuck and me, and Mark Egan played bass, and Andy Snitzer played sax. It was a good band.
Yeah.
And the the M box only has two inputs, but I was like, I got the M box, and then Chuck was like, he was like, man, plug two mics in. He goes, it's like, people, I'm sick of programming. You should just think about this. He goes, you should do it. And I started playing around with just two mics, and then I was like, man. And I got a 002, and ever since, man, I've played on like so many things for him, so many remote sessions, basically because of Chuck. But he was the guy that had the foresight to say, hey, man, record your drums. It's going to be more expensive for you because you need more inputs.
Right.
But just jump on it, do it. And
Yeah.
I'm 17 years in. But now the funny thing is, the pandemic hits, and it's really, I don't know, it didn't make sense to me, but I've become not just a little more, like way more busy with the remote session thing now than before this pandemic. And I always had, I'm in and out, I'm on the road, I'm home, and I always have something to do for somebody. It's been good. I've been lucky, but now it's like it's virtually every day. It's crazy.
Wow, that's great. And are
Yeah,
you basically just going off of word of mouth, or do you use a certain, how do they find
word
you?
of mouth.
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth, man. I mean, part of it is because I've been doing it this long. I have enough guys that I work with. Like for every one person that says, "Hey, can you do a drum track for me?" I have someone else that is like a keyboard player that produces for multiple artists.
Right.
And the other thing I'll say is the lion's share of what I do here is they're not like signed artists. They're not, records in that way. They're not like big budgets or anything. Occasionally I get some nice stuff, but money wise, but it's more volume.
Mm-hmm.
It's more volume.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so yeah, I think the key is to get with somebody or a few people that don't just record their own music. They actually have a hand in who else is going to play on something.
Right, right. So, back to those days that you were talking about in the early days of the M box, because I got on it about around that same time too. I had a friend that was into sound stuff, and he could help me, set up all the chords and stuff and plug it all in
Yeah.
the right place, and he knew the way to go about it. And I think I was at the 1814. Remember that, the Firewire 1814? It had 4 inputs instead of 2, but it was still M audio. Yeah. But getting back into it back then, I think, was great for these days, because it's become such a normal thing where it's almost like people almost expect you to have a home recording gig, set up. So what are you running now as far as your DAW and all that stuff?
I have an Avid HDIO, and my setup is very simple. Actually, I just got another 8 channels card for this HDIO, so now I have 16 inputs. I was using 8 for all these years up until like 2 weeks ago. But yeah, so I have this HDIO. Really, it's nothing more than a converter. There's no mic pre's in it. There's nothing. There isn't even a volume knob on this thing. So my system is set up. It's becoming expensive because it's higher quality, and I love it. But everything has to be bought separately. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so HDIO conversion, and right now I just have a bunch of mic pre's. I have an API lunchbox with some API mic pre's and a couple of Rupert Neve mic pre's, and I have 4 those blue Focusrite ISA mic pre's, and yeah, man, some Genelec monitors, and that's about it. And then I recently got a deal with Biodynamic microphones, which is really, really great, man. And I'm using these M160s. They look, you've probably seen them. They look like, it looks like a miniature 58.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a 58 microphone,
Oh, yeah.
but small. And those are they're ribbon mics, and those are the mics that were used for when the levee breaks.
No
Those
kidding.
are the mics that were hung over Bonham's kit. Yeah.
Oh.
And the deal with them that's cool is, like, I'm in the basement, so my ceilings they're not high. And the deal with most ribbon mics is they're figure eight. So they're going to record what's in front of them and what's behind them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a nice sounding room, it's beautiful to use ribbons.
Yeah. When
you don't have a great room, it's kind of counterproductive.
Yeah.
But with these, they're not figure eight. They're hypercardioid. So they only record what you point them at. So you get the flavor of the ribbon without having to pick up the back end. So it's been really cool, man. It's really, really nice.
Yeah. Nice. So I also noticed you've been doing a little more drum video stuff. Yeah, like solos.
Yeah, man. I decided to jump in. It's really not like me. That's one of the biggest leaps of faith ever.
I noticed it. You know, because I would never see. I think we've been Facebook friends for a while, and I would never see much from you. And then all of a sudden, I would see in these great videos of you like doing some soloing and stuff like that. Are you
crazy?
Are you doing the YouTube thing and all that? You got a YouTube
channel? I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I just I did it for Instagram and Facebook, and I'm really only using, like, I'm utilizing whatever I happen to be working on. So none of that stuff is made just for that. Like it's just tracks that I happen to be recording.
So
but
I can't expect like a drum cover of the new Taylor Swift song from you.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I will say this though, I have to come clean. Some of them are actual videos of when I'm actually recording the track. Sometimes though, because this whole camera thing, it gets on my nerves. Not that I'm not used to being in front of a camera, I am, but if it doesn't have to be there, it's not helping matters. And I want to be all in, and someone's giving me money to play on their recording. And so oftentimes what I do is I record the track. I make sure the artist is happy with it. And then I go back and I just re-record myself with the phone, still through Pro Tools. Yeah. Cause it's going to take something away. I may luck out sometimes and sound okay, but I don't know. I feel like I owe it to them to not do that.
Well, it's a distraction. It's another distraction, isn't it? Because you're thinking about that. I know what I was trying to do, that same vibe, and then you just have this other thing to think about. Like if I was in the verse or something, and it was like, you got to stop the session. Now, not only do I have to stop my recording session, I got to turn off the camera, and I got to go back and start another video and all that. And it's just occupies too much bandwidth in my head when, like you said, you're supposed to be laying down a drum track, right?
Yeah.
Not mugging for the camera. But
they're also but it's becoming the new thing now. People are expecting that you send them video footage. So, I mean, I'm rolling with it. It is what it is. I mean, I have to say, when I was in high school, if someone said, "Yo, you want to see a video of Vinny playing on the Gino Vanelli record?" I would be like, "Of course." Like, why would you not want to see it, right? But to have to do that is kind of a drag for me. But I mean, I do it. I'm just gonna roll with it. But what I do usually, what I'll try to find out from the artist is, look, if you want me to videotape me doing it, it's fine. But if I get a good take and I'm 3/4 of the way through your tune and I make a boneheaded mistake, I'm not doing the whole song over. If it feels really good, I want to punch. And now if your video is going to stop me from giving you a great track, or having me go back and spend another hour perhaps because I can't get from the beginning to the end of the tune. I mean, obviously everybody tries to get from the beginning to the end. I always do, but you could get a really good take and get most of the way through, and then you're going to really throw it out because of a camera. So they've been cool about it. Everybody's been like, no, it's not like if we're going to use your video footage, it's the camera's on you the whole time. Just stop it and start it again, and just send us pieces of video. It's all good. So
yeah, that's awesome. These are the things we have to deal with these days. Yeah. So what do you think is going to happen when this whole thing is over? Do you have things planned, or are you just going to play it by ear? I mean, I know that's kind of, none of us really knows, but
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that maybe come September, work's going to start, shows are going to come back.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, as of right now, we're supposed to go out the end of August
With
into
Hall Oates?
September. Yeah, we have a tour planned. So that obviously I have no idea if it's really going to happen, but I mean, as of right now, it looks like it's going to happen. So yeah, if the plane comes back, great. If it doesn't, then I got to hope that this little run I have going on with the recording is going to keep me afloat. And then and again, I'm always going to I'm going to play whenever I can, whether it's in a club or a club date, whatever. I mean, I have gigs. I'm still in a band. I still play with a few bands actually. I just haven't played in a year.
Right.
So, yeah, man. Hopefully come fall, we can be playing again.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Well, man, I can't thank you enough for doing this. I could talk to
Oh,
you forever, but they limit me to under an hour, not under an hour, under an hour and a half. I'm
cool.
making this up. No, I noticed that there's some of these things. It's funny, these algorithm things with like some of the videos, how like YouTube likes longer videos, it appears, but Instagram, you can't put longer videos. So I'm just trying to manage all this stuff.
All
But
right.
you gave us all kinds of good info and great stories, and I'm definitely going to edit a bunch of them and send it to you and post a bunch of things, because you gave us like a treasure trove of info and behind the scenes and all of that. So thanks again for doing it. Anything else that you want to tell us about before we go?
No, man, I'm good. I'm all good.
I think we covered quite a bit. Cool. All right, Brian. Well, where can we find you? Instagram, right? Brian Dunne Drums.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Facebook, or are you not so much on the
Yeah.
Facebook?
No, I am. I don't know. Boy, I don't even know what it's called. I don't even know what it's called.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time tagging you anytime I try to tag your drummer page. So I don't know what.
That thing doesn't even. Yeah, that doesn't even work. I mean,
Okay.
maybe it works. I don't even see it. But usually, I know. Maybe you know better than me. When I post things, I post stuff on Instagram and then turn on the Facebook thing that it attaches to Facebook. So,
right. So it's posting it to your personal
yes,
page is what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, man, I can't thank it. And again, man, you're an awful humble cat for as much as you've done, because I was trying to remember to put together the people that you played with, and you don't even mention like some of these people like Patti Austin and Average White Band and stuff. You're very humble for all the stuff you've done, man. You could have a much longer label than
Cool, man.
But yeah, I appreciate it again, and everybody needs to go check out Brian Dunne playing drums, and we'll get him on a Taylor Swift cover soon. I'm going to talk him into doing a YouTube cover of a Miley Cyrus record. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon, Brian. Take care.
All right, man. Thanks
All
for
right,
having me, man. Later.
Thank you.